Hello, and welcome to the fourth conversation on women empowerment and leadership in the month of March. How very exciting. My name is Irene Ola. I am the founder of Light Path Leadership, which is a consultancy based in Ho Chi Minh City with the vision to unleash the leadership potential of women in Vietnam for the benefit of everyone, really. The individual women, their workplaces, their families, and the communities. So it's a big vision. And I have a lot of support doing this, like, for example, for these conversations that are in collaboration. And it was actually the initiative of Christina Amann, who is in the background. I swear she's here. And Christina is the founder of the platform Sustainable Vietnam and a sustainability consultant in her own right. It's also a collaboration with MCham Vietnam, who also puts a lot of effort and it's one of their core values is diversity and inclusion as well. And they take it very seriously. I'm the proud co-chair of the Women in Leadership MCham committee. And this is our mission, to work with women and our allies to enhance women leadership in MCham, the communities, and in Vietnam. And it's time to welcome our fourth guest. Thank you, Paul Huynh, for joining us. Paul is the head with KPMG Asia Pacific, and you're the head of People, Performance, and Culture. Welcome to this conversation.
Thank you, Irene.
And it's wonderful to have a male ally on these calls, on these conversations.
Yeah, thanks to you, Irene, and to the Sustainable Vietnam team for having me on today. It's a real honor.
Thank you. We've had, for the ones who have so far missed the first three conversations, so we tried to have guests from different sectors and get different perspectives on the topic of women empowerment and leadership. So we started with Thao Nguyen, who has a good mix of both private sector and NGO sector and is presently working for VCCI. We then had social enterprise with Huynh Dang. We had foreign government with Julian Cowley, the Australian Consul General, and we now have the corporate sector with you and the male ally. I can't say it often enough, so thank you.
Thank you.
One of the questions I've asked all my guests, and I also tried to answer myself, was around motivation, right? So a lot of us may have this topic of women empowerment and leadership as part of our roles, but what's your motivation and what's been driving your passion?
Thanks, Irene. I mean, I have been passionate and inspired on this topic, for a long time, and I attribute it to a number of reasons. I think, firstly, from the work front, I've been blessed throughout my career to have the opportunity to work with supremely talented female colleagues and leaders, I think, who have been vital in my own kind of development and journey as a leader and as a HR practitioner. So that has been the first key reason. I think, secondly, and perhaps most importantly, for me, is that I grew up around four really strong women within my own family. My mum and my three sisters, who have really inspired me and taught me right throughout my life. And watching them and how they lead and work and navigate their lives has been hugely inspiring for me. And now I love it when people say to them, "Oh, your brother is so passionate about inclusion and diversity, and he's really been a strong proponent of this cause." So hearing statements like that makes me really proud, and if anything, strengthens my resolve to continue this important work.
Oh, this is lovely. So they get actually feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think with my platform and just with the role I have, I'm fortunate to be able to join a number of great sessions like this one
Mm.
here, and many of them do get back to my sisters who are based in Australia, and just hearing them say things like that, I think has been a hugely rewarding part of the work that I'm blessed to do.
Oh, that is lovely how this goes full circle. And it's really interesting also what you're saying. I've had over the last few months, I've had quite a number of conversations with male CEOs in Vietnam on the topic of how can we, what motivates them.
Yeah.
And that was part of an initiative of the Australian consulate here, and which we haven't publicized yet to come. Anyway, and personal role models was, I think, that is something that motivates or drives a number of men, having both in a positive or negative way. So also having seen, I don't know, their grandmother being treated not equally drives them now to take action.
Yeah, that's been my experience too. I mean, Irene, I think I find with the male leaders that I work with, those that have daughters or sisters, who have really inspired them and strong. It really does influence and shape the way that you lead and you make decisions, particularly around initiatives and programs that are related to women's empowerment and equality. So I found that as well, that there's a level of empathy for those that have daughters and and other female role models within their own personal spheres.
So I will come to the other motivators as well, because we can't always rely on people's empathy, right, to change things, or we can't always make sure they have daughters because
yes,
as a motivation. But it's interesting to see the parallel in what motivates people, and people don't usually talk about it either. So it's almost like you have to dig a bit, and then people go like, I never thought about it, actually, why I'm passionate about this topic. And
yes.
So what would you say, as someone who is both personally passionate about the topic, but also very engaged, and we'll hear more about what KPMG actually does in Vietnam here too. What would you say then to people who, say, you know what, we're already there, or Vietnam is already quite equal. We look at all the outstanding women. You've talked about that. I have personally celebrated all of them and keep on celebrating. But what do you say to people who say there's actually not a problem that needs to be solved? We're already quite equal.
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is I would agree, I think, to a certain extent that, yes, we have made progress. But I think, too, that it's easy to look at advancement at that collective national level and say that, that there's a lot done and maybe we can slow down, or perhaps we don't need to emphasize it as much. Or, on the flip side, we may have some who might say that, there's been progress and wow, there's still so much more to do. And quite frankly, it's overwhelming, so I'll just let others do it. So I think you have that kind of spectrum. And what I would encourage people to do is really to change their lens perspective and really look within your own kind of internal circle of friends, or even in the workplace, and ask, who can I impact within my own sphere of influence? Which one of my friends is potentially a leader within his own company who could become a stronger ally voice for women's empowerment? Or who is it that's sitting in the cubicle next to me in the office who can become an even stronger champion and advocate within the organization? And, I heard this great quote recently, Irene, and this person said, don't let your fear of doing everything stop you from doing anything. So, I think there's, particularly when it just seems so overwhelming, I think it's important for us just to change that lens purview and just look first to our own immediate kind of circles. And it's going to be everyone's collective efforts to make those small ripples that I think will create that broader change impact that we need.
I like both. There are two quotes I will steal. I will copyright you, maybe. It's one is one is did you say change the lens or put a new lens on?
Yeah, either. I think change your lens kind of, perspective or yeah, I mean, amend the way that you look at, the world or different topics and themes such as this one.
I think that is a great exercise for all of us for different topics, but
yeah.
Changing our lenses, which hopefully then means changing perspectives as well.
Yes.
And I like the I think I coined this. Now I'm taking my own copyright.
Quote,
the micro actions, I think I called it, at an event where we both went, because I am aware of that people may be afraid it's just too big and too much, and then there's no action at all.
Yeah, and quite frankly, it's scary sometimes when you look at, what is left to do. But don't let that fear, stop you from playing your role or doing anything at all.
And I'm just reading how Christina is going to steal it too. It will come back to you many times, and the collective efforts will make the ripple effect. So and Bob is like, yes, together we are stronger. It is about community and all of us, right? And rather than one person taking very big action. So I also, coming back to the changing lanes, right? And maybe for the first time, if you're a male and you want to be a male ally, look at what can I do? And of course, that's almost a brave thing to do, because it implies that something isn't quite the way it should be at this point, right? There is this admission is part of it. Before you put on the new lens to say, okay, what can I concretely do? Where is the woman I can suggest as my successor, for example?
Yes. And I think you're absolutely right. I don't think too it's about forcing the view on anyone else or expecting them to change. But as you say, it's thinking about the actions that the micro actions. I'm going to steal that. The micro actions that you can take, and the role model that you are going to be, and then let others observe you, and then hopefully that will inspire them to also want to follow suit.
And I this is going to be my homework for every man I'm going to meet from now on. So it's the changing the lanes and asking himself, in this case, what can I do? Like, what's the small yet life structure system changing step I can take? And they may be surprised what happens when they put on this new lens. I gave this example of who's the woman I can promote, and just as an example, one of the CEOs I talked to in the last few months as part of this document, these conversations, he, for example, when he promoted a woman as his successor to the board, he was a bit surprised how much resistance and pushback there was, and how many questions, and are you sure, and is she really, and so I asked, so what made you suggest her, right? And he said, well, I've observed her. She has the right, she's got the right strength. She's got the right experience. I know she can take the company to the next level. It's business decisions. It's that sort of lens. It's not about, oh, we need to help women. No. I watched her. She may still need some mentoring, and I'm ready to do this in the coming year. But I've observed her. I know her strengths. I know she's good for the business. That's why I suggest her. But he had surprising pushback and lots of questioning from the board, the all-male board, I should say.
Well, and don't you think, Irene, like it's a journey? I think it's a journey as well. I mean, we don't expect everyone to be at the same level of understanding or, acknowledgement of the issues right from the get-go. And some will need more convincing and take time to digest and reflect on the impact. So I do think you're right. It's a journey. I think that every one individual or every leader goes through.
So I've been advertising micro actions, and there is a very valid question which leads us into one of our other topics as well, which is around policies, frameworks. What can we do in the bigger picture? And I think coming in as a corporate, I think everyone will be interested to hear, both from your personal experience, of course, on personal motivation, but what did or has KPMG done so far? What were changes and the impact you see on the business?
Yeah, great question. I think two things that really come to mind for me in terms of our journey, and the first and really critical success factors for us. The first is having that steadfast, visible senior leadership commitment, and starting really from the top. And those of you who know, KPMG's chairman and CEO Warwick Klein, will know that this is a really important strategic agenda for him, and he's been, I think, really intentional in ensuring that these organizational conversations around women's empowerment and equality are happening right throughout the year across the entire employee life cycle, not just during IWD campaigns, for example. So I think that has been the first kind of critical success factor for us. And I think secondly, and you've kind of alluded to, but just as importantly, I think it's about the real actions. Similar to what I shared earlier about really encouraging our leaders to, think about really encouraging others to come along, on the journey with us. So extending the invitation to really mentor and coach a female future leader when they're a part of the recruitment process, really thinking about, who's the best person for the role, based on not on gender, but on actual performance. And it also implies, for me, I think it also implies developing metrics and scorecards that can really measure progress, and that where we can hold people to account. So you mentioned, the policy, which is something that I think we're really proud of, is the inclusion and diversity policy, which we launched in 2016 now, which really codifies and spells out our approach to equality, within the KPMG context. But Warwick has also been really clear that KPMG in Vietnam and Cambodia, we will have at least 40% female partners by 2023. Currently, it's at 28%. So I think it's progress, but many people kind of see that as a quota, but I don't think it is. I think it's more an understanding that firstly we're a better organization when we have diverse teams and a diverse leadership composition, who are able to bring those unique varying perspectives. But also, as you said, we understand that it helps us to collaborate better and helps us to come up with the best solutions for our clients, and ultimately therefore has an impact to the bottom line.
And thank you. Have you been able to, I'm very curious, because there seem to be two schools of thought. So one arguing that it's about women's rights are human rights, and that's why we have to do it. And then there are others who take the business approach. It's good for business. And often they don't talk to each other, or they don't even like each other. From a business point of view, or both, because I know KPMG also is a very good corporate citizen, but from a business point of view, can you help some of the non-believers? Can you share some of the impact you've seen from the changes over the last few years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I mean, it is. There's the social obligation side, and that's why I say I think that the campaigns are important, and it's important for organizations to be seen, but we've got to move beyond the hashtag choose to challenge IWD 2021, and I believe that through the through the initiatives and the programs that we put in place, such as the policy, such as the metrics and the scorecards, we've really seen positive changes and trends in our retention of staff, particularly female staff, employee engagement. So we track employee engagement levels through an annual survey. Client satisfaction surveys as well. We conduct from the lens of our clients. So having them share that they appreciate the diverse perspectives that the KPMG engagement team brings has been something that has been hugely satisfying for us. But then also, the sustained kind of year-on-year growth, revenue growth that the firm continues to see, I think, and we may not be able to solely attribute that to our approach to diversity and inclusion, but it's hard to argue that it hasn't had a significant impact to all of those metrics. So when you look at all of those things combined, I think it's hard to argue that it hasn't impacted in some way, shape, or form to our year-on-year revenue growth. And so it's for all those reasons, both the social, but in particular, the business results. For all those reasons why we'll continue to do all we can, I think, to remove the gender barriers that prevent our female employees from unleashing their full potential.
Fantastic. That was like a real, I hope everyone's watching this back to get a really great summary of what happens when there's top leadership commitment. And I would agree, without that, I'm not sure you will be able to succeed. But you also put a number of changes, like both policy and practices in place. Can you give a couple of examples of the ones that were most impactful?
Yeah, so I alluded to the inclusion and diversity policy. So we're, I think, made it as part of our commitment to be really intentional about this, actually craft and codify a policy that we went out to all 1,800 employees, that work in Vietnam and Cambodia, to say that not only these are the behaviors that we expect our people to live by, which is really based around, our values, and our approach to equality, regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation, religion, race, all of that. But also, I think just as importantly, what are the behaviors that we will not tolerate?
Right.
So if you demonstrate these negative behaviors, that there are repercussions and consequences. And, as a firm that stands behind our commitment to our values and our approach to inclusion and diversity, we won't tolerate. So I think that was a really important step, for us. I think that, and one that I'm happy to share, with the audience.
And it sounds like with these new behavioral guidelines, if you will, maybe some people had to put on new lenses. It was maybe the first time that they thought, or they weren't aware that they did certain things or had certain opinions, biases, if you will, about other groups.
Yes.
I also wanted to emphasize the thing that there is the top leadership commitment, but you also measure. And I think this is a part that sometimes misses an organization, that there is a vision communicated, but not necessarily some measurements in place. How do we actually measure whether this is happening or not? And if we are not, if you have a target, it's a very, very concrete one, 40%, at least 40% by 2023, right?
That's right. That's right.
So, what happens when we get off course? Like if we look at the numbers and they go like, not quite happening. Like, how do you course correct, so to speak?
Yeah. So I think as like KPMG, like many organizations, we kind of live and die by our KPIs, right?
Yes.
And so for us, once we communicate that this is a target or a KPI that we're aiming for, then really as part of that accountability and ownership, it's on every single partner and leader then to understand, then internalize that firm KPI and think about then the role that they can play in helping us to ensure that we're able to achieve that. So it's communicating the KPI, communicating then the importance of why we've specifically set this out as a KPI, and then once they buy into that, then asking them to internalize it and say, how can we then, in our function, in our role, help the firm to achieve that? So, so we, we have various check-in points throughout the year, and it's measuring how we're tracking against, and then because of those regular check-in points, as you say, we're able to either, either course correct if we are off track, or in some cases, pleasantly, maybe we're well on track, and actually it's time for us to stretch the bar and move the bar even higher.
Oh, wow.
So I think that's the interim check-in points are important for those two factors, not just course correction, but also maybe there's an opportunity for us to go even further than we first anticipated.
Wow. I have an eye on the time, and I'm 31 minutes in. So thank you so much, Paul.
No, thanks for having me.
I can't see more questions, so I'm happy to wrap it up. Thank you for both your personal passion, but also sharing with us what is possible if an organization, commits to gender equality, to women empowerment, and it is possible to have a positive impact, not just on, the engagement of your employees, but the business results. So, sorry, I will put you on the spot, and there's a reason for that, but so what do you say to people who still have only male boards?
What I would say is, as I kind of said, I think it is a journey, and my philosophy is crawl, walk, and run. So if you're at
I think I know.
if you're at that point, then first maybe it's about crawling. So understanding everyone, then there's a starting point, and so maybe just acknowledging first,
Okay.
but then understanding that the importance of why there needs to be a change, why we need to validate people, maybe then starting things like the conversations, setting up employee networks, and even if it is just starting on the campaign and events that we talked about, maybe that's
Right.
part of the crawl. Then after that, you can start to walk, right? And then do some of that adapting, embedding into the organizational processes, things like the policy, which I talked about,
Yeah.
more formal. And then by then, after that, you'll
Yeah.
be ready to run,
Right.
which is really about storytelling, something that I know you do so well, Irene. And then we start to really change, release the stigma, and move beyond the awareness campaigns and the crawling.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us. See, it was fast 30-something minutes.
Yeah, that flew, and a real honor to be part of this discussion with you. Thank you so much, Irene.
And we'll put our new lenses on. It's good to change them once in a while. Thank you, and thank you everyone for watching us, joining us for this fourth conversation in this International Women's Month. It is really. So let's see how we can continue our conversations and get more allies involved as well, male and female. Thank you, everyone. Great pleasure to have you.
Thanks, everyone. Nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.